Welcome everyone for the In Pursuit of Grants Part 2. I hope you've had the opportunity to see Part 1 because that covered a lot of basic background in what we were accomplishing with the grants. But this is Part 2 to take us a step further. Tonight we're going to go over some detailed information about the grants. And with me tonight is, come on. How could I blank on that? Hope Rollins. It's been a long time since I've done a presentation. Hope Rollins, who is also very active in writing grants for Riverwalk Theater as well as other organizations, and has things to share with us this evening too. We will have time at the end for some questions and answers. If you want to enter your questions during the presentation into the chat feature, that would be great, because then we get a chance to monitor, see what's going on, and may enter may answer those as we're going along also. Also, please enter your email addresses so we can follow up with information next training time and date. And also, we've got some projects to grow out of this. We've got some assignments that we can have you undertake to really get into the nitty-gritty of what's necessary in terms of writing grants. And so we can deal with that. The purpose of tonight is to empower. Actually, the real purpose is to get more people to help Hope and me write grants. Okay, simple, fun. And we know that it's sometimes daunting to say, okay, we're going to write a grant. How do I do that? And so we want to share the skills and share the ideas and share the information that brought us into this program. I had very little training, but I had a couple of folks that led me into this. Bill Helder and Mara also helped me get started with getting into the little pieces of the grants first, until I finally was able to put whole grants together. And so this is to pass on that knowledge so that we can get ready and have that happen. We're going to focus tonight on the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs, MCACA grant, and some of the elements of that grant. They have a, they offer several kinds of grants, which we're going to get into later. And the one we've relied on for the past several years is an operational grant, which basically just provides us money to operate the theater. And so that's what we're going to be doing. There are a number of different things you need to gather before you can start writing the grant. Every grant wants to know how you spend your money and what is your money, what's your revenue, how much of it's restricted, what your expenses are, and those kinds of things. Your financials, what your budget is, and that's we prepare. Our office manager, Mike Syracuse, has a profit and loss statement that he tracks every penny that's spent and every penny that comes in, that we have that. They sometimes go to outside organizations too. The data arts statement is a thing that we're going to get into a little bit later that shows what we have. We always have to have our demographics. Who is Riverwalk Theater? Who are volunteers? Who are the people that come see our shows? Who are the people that benefit from us being in the community? Almost every granting organization wants to see how we're tied to the community and how we benefit them by being an organization around. So what's our community involvement? And therefore, we have to take a look at what we've done in all our shows and find out who attended, how many artists were involved, how many volunteers were involved, how much money did we pay artists? And even though most of our people at Riverwalk are volunteers, sometimes we have an orchestra, and we hire an orchestra to do some things. So they want to know all of those things. And they also want to know our history of grants that we have been awarded, one of that. They also want to know who runs the organization, our board of directors list. And it's more than just knowing who they are, but how they are connected to the community. Because they want to know that this organization is been around and is not just a bunch of friends getting together to do something, but it is a community organization, it's a community theater. And so they want to know the names of community involvement of that. And then the other things we have to have are our DUNS number, our nonprofit organization number, our address, our phone number, all those kinds of things necessary for all that. And then the final thing, grant organizations, the people who make grants want to know that our people that run the organization have authorized to apply for a grant. This isn't a renegade within the organization that just wants to get some money. They want to know that the organization has actually authorized the organization to submit for a grant. So all that kind of information has to be gathered together. Before, it's been with various people within the organization have had this information, and we've been running around year after year trying to get it. We're trying to improve that by putting it in a one place on Google Docs, where we can have all that information available. So all we have to do is update it annually instead of having to recreate the whole thing. Now, MCACA has a number of different grants. As I mentioned earlier, they have operational support grants. They have project support grants. Mostly, these are mini grants that support, for example, in our case, doing a particular play of some sort. They also help you improve the building equipment that you have, and that's capital improvement. And they have, I haven't listed here, but they do also have personal improvement, education grants that are here. They always start within the state's fiscal year, because most of this money comes a flow through from the state government. So the grants are for projects that start October 1st and end September 30th. Now, our fiscal year at Riverwalk Theater is July 1 through June 30. So we have to kind of show how that fits into this October 1st, September 30th. And the amounts always vary depending on the organization's budget. Our budget allows us to apply for a maximum of $25,000 for operations. On that, if we crack the 300,000 barrier, we can start asking for $50,000 of operations. And same thing with capital improvement. Some of these grants are, they just provide the money. Some of them are matching grants like capital improvement. It's a 50% match on that. So your budget's got to show what you want to get. And if you want to buy $30,000 worth of equipment, they will provide 15, and you have to show that you either have the other 15 or are raising the other 15. And the chances of raising that are good for that. So these are the kinds of grants we have. For tonight's purposes, we can go ahead and change the slide there, Hope. For tonight's purposes, we are going after operational support. And this will be operations for the 21-22 season, whatever that might be, when we get around to that. And that's going to be kind of the challenge this year, is trying to look back at the 2021 season, which was kind of in place before COVID hit, but then changed as a result of COVID, and then using the results of the 2021 season to prepare for the 21-22 season. We actually did receive an operations grant for 2021, and it was very helpful in enabling us to survive. And we have to file the final report of that in September of this year. All the grants will ask for a report. How did you do? And if you don't meet the goals that you had in your report or in your grant application, there'll be a question of whether or not you receive the money that you've already spent. So we have to be very careful to meet those. I'm sure it's going to take, it's going to be a interesting way of trying to write the final report for this past grant year. Okay. Mini grants, however, come in 2 rounds, and those are for projects. So you do have a chance to get for mini grants. If you apply for an operational support grant, you are not able to apply for a mini grant. But you are able to apply for the other grants if you have them. We have a tendency, we have received capital improvement grants in the past. We have received project or support grants in the past. But right now we're going for operational support because the money's a little bit less towards a particular project and also mostly needed for our overhead. So that's why we're going for operational support at this point. If we go for a mini grant, we would do that in connection with another organization perhaps. And that way we could make them the fiscal agent for the mini grant, but we would still be able to accomplish what we want. So we're going to focus on the MCACA. And the MCACA, as with many other granting agencies, has their own grant portal. Now you have to use their online system in order to get into the grant. And what the MCACA uses is the portal called Smart Simple, which I've fond of saying is neither smart nor simple, but it's required. So we do use that. And we're going to get into that now. If we can, I will show you where that is. Can you see that? MCACA Smart Simple. The tab at the top there, you can see it's mcaca.smartsimple.com. And then we've got the login here. The login that we have that I use is Riverwalk Theater, RWT at Riverwalk Theater. To get into it, they've expanded this recently to allow multiple people to get into it. And then actually it's me pretending I'm Mike, that then allows them, notice in the upper right-hand corner, it said Michael Syracuse. So that's who I am at this point. I'm Michael Syracuse, now operating within this. And it's important to note that because the emails all go to Mike, and he shares his email address with me so that I can find out what they're doing here. There are two sections here that we have to it. First is profiles, the organizational profile, and then the different grants. And you see I've got the capital improvement, the new leaders, that's what I was trying to get, operational support, and mini grants arts project, and mini grants pod, which we haven't used. I want to go to the organizational profile, which you see over in the left-hand column. I'm going to open that up. And this is the major point, the contact of the organization. Mike is the owner of the organization as far as the grant is concerned. And notice we've got lots of information here. And I'm going to go across the top here. It's organizational information, as I mentioned earlier, name, address, web address, our status, what kind of an institution we are, our discipline, it's theater, our state Senate district and our state House district, so that we can thank them for authorizing the budget that takes this. And then authorizing official is the person who signs off, and that's Jeff, is actually the president of our board of directors. So we have that. They also have ADA 504 information, whether or not we are disability access available. And then we've got this information that we've applied here. And then we've got our important part, our organizational history and board. These are the information with regard to who we are. And I want to point out the board of directors here. Across the top of the board of directors, they want prefix, first name, last name, title, occupation, and city of residence. And then they also want, and I'm not seeing it here to get through, they want what affiliations our board of directors have to, again, see how are we connected with the community. And so this has to be updated each year so that we have a board of directors list that goes along with our grant. The demographics. who is in our organization, describing our community. How many describe our audience, and other information. How are you using demographic to inform your organization's decision making? In other words, how do we respond to our community? What are they saying on that? So the surveys that we've done of our audience members, the surveys we've done of our volunteers are all important here. Then our grant history is something that's important here. And that is what's involved with the organizational profile. This can be done well ahead of applying for any grant. In fact, this has to be done each year before you go into and select a grant, because this information is automatically put into the grant application. Now I want to go back. Now we're going to apply for a grant. We go down this side, our opportunities. We want to look at operational support. Just simply click on that. And you come up with the things that are available in our operational support. We can't do the operational support for last year because the deadline's passed. We already put that one in, so we're okay with that one. But we can apply for operational support for this year. So we're now going to start the application for operational support. And again, we have various information in terms of our eligibility. And if we click all of these, the way, have we physically located state of Michigan? Yes. Proposed occur between fiscal year? Yes. Applicant have a tax exempt number? Yes. Is it a nonprofit arts and cultural? Yes. They have 3 consecutive of $10,000 of unrestricted revenue? Yes. Our program's up to the general public, and they are continuously operating for 3 or more consecutive years? Yes. Put all that in there, and we get down to the submit button, which I got covered up with my picture. Nope, I don't have it there. It's covered up with my other thing that we have down here. But that's all we have to do to get that. And now we can move on to the next section and start filling out the grant. We don't have to fill out the grant at this point, but that's the initial step we have going to start the grant. I am now going to go back. And once you start the grant, you can go in and out the whole time, and it'll allow you to take some time off, do your research, then fill out the various things that happen. All right, I'm going to log out of here now. Okay, this is the stuff we just covered. The organizational profile, which has all this information. The grant opportunities that we see over there. It's just simply a matter of selecting one or the other of that. Next slide. The other, okay. The grant itself has a number of sections, the application. It's got a narrative, which is basically a description of what you're going to do, what our capacity is, the management, the quality of our programming, the community impact, all those kinds of things. The financials that we have, the deadlines, and the authorization that I mentioned. Okay, next slide, please. The narrative is the most important part of any grant. Basically, what you're going to do with their money and why should they give the grant to you. It's important with any narrative that you answer all of the questions that the grantor is asking, and you answer them generally in order that they're asking them. The narrative of the MCACA is worth 65 points at the review. The total grant is worth 100 points. So you can see this is the most important part of it. They want to know, first of all, of that 65, 20 points are organizational capacity and management. How are we organized? What's our mission? What do we do? What's our program that we offer to the community? Qualifications of the board and professional staff, including their affiliations to the community. Our fiscal oversight. How do we know that they're going to, will they know that we're spending our money appropriately and safely for them? So the fact that we have our audit and we submit our audit has all that in there. And our use of adequate, appropriate promotional and marketing methods, use of new technologies to provide, we have to provide information about our website, our Facebook page, all of that information, contacts, all that kind of thing. So again, so they know that we aren't just doing this on a whim, but we really have a plan to be a successful organization. They like to support successful organizations. And it's not enough to say, well, if we had your money, we would be successful. No, it's got to be, they have to see that you're successful. Next slide, please. The next 25 points of the narrative are quality of artistic and cultural programming. How do we define quality? And how do we know that we are producing quality? One of the elements I use with this all the time is the number of pulsars and thespies that we win. And it's not enough to simply say we've won this many thespies, one of them pulsars, but what are pulsars? What are thespies? And it's good to know that this is a community newspapers that use their critics and their judges to look at all of the theater done in the area, and they pick out the best of the best. And the fact that we have won a good share of these is a good sense of our quality. Internally, I use the Barneys to indicate that we look at our own quality and we and make decisions about quality. Sometimes we have very good things that we do, and sometimes things don't work out so well. And the fact that we were able to address both of those is helpful to them. That same thing goes with economics. When we point out we were able to meet our marketing goal with this particular play. In some plays, we aren't meeting our marketing goals. We use that information to make determination about what we're going to do the next season. And it's important for them to know that we do that. And they're very understanding that sometimes you can't, sometimes the public doesn't respond to a play for various reasons, but it's still important to do those plays. And so I'm going to get to that a little in another presentation a little bit later. Next slide, please. Okay, then the community impact. How do we engage and learn from our audience? How do we engage and learn from our artists? Reach a broader community or specifically targeted audience with programs. How are we trying to reach out and bring in new audience? How are we trying to go out and reach the diversity of our audience? And how's that reflected in our programming? For example, we will use Doll's House in our report to say we reach out to and deal with issues related to women. And that's why we did the play Doll's House. Working is the next one. We'll use those. Not every play has to be really meant. Some of it's just entertainment, and we'll say that too. And it's recognized because that's part of our purpose. Our goal is to present our mission in our Constitution is to present a variety of theatrical experiences, and we reflect upon that mission throughout the whole narrative. Next slide, please. Okay. MCACA requires a 3-year history from what's called the Cultural Data Arts Profile, which is sponsored by a university that looks at our revenues, expenses, our balance sheet, our workforce and workspaces, program activity, audience, and everything that we do, and wraps it up. They take a real close look at that. Now I want to show you what that looks like. Data arts. This is the getting started in that. And again, you're going to see the login. And wow, it's Riverwalk Theater again. Welcome Mike back into this. And this is the data arts. We prepare one for every year. We've been doing it, I think, for about 10 years now. And we have it. And you see for the fiscal year 2020, that one is in progress because that one I've already started getting ready for it. So we're ready to get that. It's I'm loading it because we're going to see then the menu of the kinds of things we need to include in this. Our data profile, just like the organizational profile we had in the MCACA, this one's a data profile that we provide to make sure that the information that's going to be inputted automatically is all up to date. And I've already done that. Then I want to go down to this section because you see this section here that I'm circling with my cursor. Okay. We've put in our information about revenue, our information about expenses. Sounds simple enough. However, the data art profile doesn't speak the same language as the audit or exactly the same language as our profit and loss statements. And so the auditor always takes our profit and loss statements, which is the auditing or the bookkeeping that Mike keeps in the office, and translate that into the audit. I've got to untranslate that, or we have to untranslate that from the audit and use the audit also to pull out the information that Data Arch is asking for specifically on this. It's all going to be program revenue and program expenses, administrative revenue and administrative expenses. So it's we have to go in and make some decisions about how we're going to pull all of that together. The fortunately, as we go through this year to year, you can leave sticky notes for yourself and say, I pulled this information from line items X, Y, and Z to come to this conclusion. And that's very important so that we have a consistency. Because if there's a increase in a particular line item, they're going to want to know why that increase is there. If it's in revenue, that's great. If it's an expense, you got to really explain why it happens. We've had a couple of years in which we have had losses in our overall value, primarily due to depreciation. And so we've got to explain all of that as well. And if we have a season where we have a dip in audience attendance, we've got to explain why that occurred on that. And the people who review these grants are familiar with organizations and familiar that sometimes the artistic decisions don't always translate into increased audience, but it's important to make those decisions on that. But they still want to see, is the organization stable? We'll have our balance sheet out there. What's our net worth now compared to our net worth last year? And have that. Our workforce, is primarily volunteers that we have, and we have to explain that. And our workspaces. The costume shop is a part of this whole calculation. Then our program activity. What do we do with money we get? And who comes and watches us for that? And then the wrap up is how we are going to go forward into the next year. So that's all information, and that's why we need the audit, the P&L, the profit and loss statements, and any other financial mistake. We need show reports. How many people showed up? How many of those were adults? How many of those were children? How many of those were seniors? How many of those were? How many tickets did we sell? How many tickets did we give away for each show? All of that information is important in this program activity in our audiences. Okay, and so the data arts is a very important part of what we're doing. This is probably takes as much time to fill out as the actual grant for MCACA because this is stuff that can be done ahead of time using using the audit, which comes in October. The grant is due in May, actually June 1st, but we can start in October with the audit. We have the profit and loss from the previous fiscal year. I always go by fiscal year for us, which is July to June. And we also use, because it's the previous fiscal year, the audit is based on the previous fiscal year, we use the season. So I will be using not the 21 not the 2021 season. I'll be using the 1920 season to do the program information. And that was the season that was played all the way up to March last year. We had one performance of our last show, and then we had to shut down for the previous year. So that's going to be all the information that we can pull. And quite frankly, this could have been started. We could have started writing this in November of last year because our audit usually comes in by October. However, I didn't. I usually wait until about February or March to start the culture, the data arts section. I would like to have a system set up where we could start earlier so that we wouldn't have to beat our brains out in the first part of the year about this. So, but we'll make progress on that. Okay, I'm going to get out of this now. And Mike Syracuse is going to log out. Those are the two websites that we will be using primarily to pull together the information we have here. One thing I want to say, some of this involves a lot of research, the demographics especially. I use census data to get general area demographics, which is our target. And we say in our MCACA, we are a tri-county cultural arts organization, Ingham, Clinton, and Eaton counties. And so I get the data I can in terms of the census to indicate what the demographics are of those counties. And then I have to pull that into directly what our census is, where we've been operating it's a little difficult to get this because we don't have accurate data as to, I can't tell you who bought tickets to each show. I can tell you how many adults, how many senior tickets we sold, how many military tickets we sold, how many student tickets we sold, part of whom are going to be adults and part of whom are going to be children. And so I use a formula on that. We have been looking at a new ticketing system, which we really need to help us with this. We need to put together a ticketing system that will allow us to gather specific data information that will help us with our demographics, both in our audiences and also our volunteers. We know we've got volunteers, we list them in programs all the time, but we don't know the demographics exactly of who those volunteers are. And we need that information. We need to be more accurate with that information than we are. We come close, but we need more accuracy on that. So I'm always saying we need a new ticketing system that's going to help us do that. Will also help us manage our patrons and be more responsive to our audience on that. So that's the nitty gritty of applying for an MCACA grant. The application itself, and the data arts, and the research that has to go into these things. We're going to have a couple of opportunities for those who would like to join us in the grant process to take a section of this and do some research that we can help you guide so you can get a feel for what it takes to get this done. But more of that in a minute. Back to you, Hope.
Yeah, and Tom, there's actually a question that we've got.
Yes.
I just, Michelle T was asking, as you went through that last SMU data arts process and showing some of the screens, what was it that depreciated?
It's the building. It's the building depreciation that primarily caused. When you look at the audit, there's going to be a section on depreciation, and that's what it is.
Excellent. Michelle T, if that doesn't answer your question, let us know.
Okay. It also says there's a question. The grant website you are showing is also available for international organizations. Are you talking about the data arts or the MCACA?
I mean both organizations.
What's that?
I say I mean both website.
Both websites.
Yeah.
MCACA that we're applying for is Michigan only. There, you have to be, as you saw the questions, eligibility for applying for the grants, you have to be a Michigan organization for MCACA. Data Arts, I'm not sure who they all cover. It is national, but
Right.
whether it's international, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Tom, Michelle T has one more question. Is there a reason the fiscal year audit accounting cannot align with the SMU data arts numbers that are required?
Is there a reason the fiscal year can't align with that? I'm not sure what the question. It's not a question of aligning with the data arts. It's a question of aligning with MCACA, whose fiscal year is the state fiscal year, and not our fiscal year. Could we change our fiscal year?
Yes,
be-
just to make the accounting simpler.
I imagine we could, but that involves changing our season. Because we normally like to try to start the season with the fall, starting with the September show.
Okay.
And the state fiscal year starts October 1st. And so it would be closer if we started our fiscal year September 1, but even then that is not quite right because many of the production expenses for that fall show occur in July and August.
Of course.
So
Of course.
it really isn't all that, yeah, it's not presented a problem to us in terms of having our grants evaluated appropriately and such. We've been able to present the information in a way that it's understood to the grants people.
Okay.
So I think it probably would be more of a problem for us to change our fiscal year just because of the way we run our seasons.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. So we probably will finish up kind of early. It depends on how many additional questions that we may have. But just to kind of wrap up all the things that Tom just mentioned, obviously these are some of the key things that we were looking at in terms of homework that we would actually have for attendees of today's training, but then also those volunteers that want to support Riverwalk. So these are some key things we need done. We need definitely an update to our board of directors listing and all of that show report data, working very closely with Mike Syracuse to pull that information, not just from the virtual events that we have, but also the face-to-face in-person events that we've had as we look to apply for the MCACA grant. So again, the show reports as well as virtual show report. And as you can see from the data arts system, there's a lot of financial aspects to that. But just kind of starting off in terms of any volunteers that are interested in supporting Riverwalk's efforts, we're looking to update our board of directors listing and also pulling the data for the show reports and virtual show data. Tom, is there anything else?
The way I'll organize this is if someone's interested in updating the board of directors, I'll provide you with the list of board of directors. I'll provide you with what we already have in terms of information about them and contact information for members of the board of directors. And then it would just be a follow-up with the board of directors and see if there are any changes in what they have. But also informing the board of directors of the kinds of information that we need, especially having them rack their brains about how they're affiliated within the community. Michelle told me just a little while ago, I found out she was working on a race for, I forget now what the organization was there, Michelle, but she was tied to a community organization that's put on this race all the time. And I think it was related to food sufficiency. But so if our board of directors are involved with all kinds of organizations, even if they're volunteers for organizations, I volunteer for the zoo, I volunteer in Michigan State for a standardized patient in their college there, which sounds like, how's that related? It just says that I'm connected to the community and doing some of the things there, in addition to the work I do at Riverwalk Theater.
Right.
And so that the granting organization sees that we are more than just a single vision organization, and we attract people that have that also have interests other than just theater, which is important to have. On the show reports, Mike prepares the show reports, ticket sales, how much money earned, how much was spent, expenses, revenue, ticket sales by category, and other kinds of information. And we just need that all compiled and to see what the season looked like. So taking a look at the 1920 season, I'll provide the person that wants to do that with all the show reports that Mike gave, and ask that person to compile them, to give me a report, so we know how many children attended this year, how many adults attended this year, how many seniors attended this year, which seniors are also adults, but breaking it down in everything so that we can pull that together. We offer a military discount, important to know for the grantor. Okay, how many people took advantage of that military discount? Is it working? That kind of thing. So I'll provide the show reports to the person. We can email the show reports, and if the person can compile those and report back, that would be helpful to getting through. The virtual show data, again, Mike's been compiling information in terms of revenue. We had some ticket sales, but this would go beyond the ticket sales. We'd have to check with our social media and to find how many hits did we have on each of those performances. How many people showed up to YouTube to watch that kind of thing, and see if we can put in that. So that would be talking with our social media people, and I think that's Kate Dickinson that's in charge of it. I put you in connection with that person and trying to pull that data together in some compiled form. So be ready on that. And that will be important for the end of grant report that I'm going to have to write in September. That's due October 30th to summarize what we did in the operations grant this year. So those are some opportunities to find out real nuts and bolts, the kind of information we need for writing the grant. And then once those are completed, we could, if we took about a 3-week period to try to pull that information together, once that's completed, then we could fold it into the application for the MCACA grant, and I would show the person, each of the folks there, how that information is useful. So I think in terms of going forward, as we look at a future training, we look at the reports that we do get back, and talk about the work it took to get those, and then show how we can put those actually in the grant. It's my intent between now and the next time we get together to get the data arts thing finished and to get a good start on the narrative for the MCACA grant.
Wonderful. So any questions, I think, for Tom or I regarding kind of the homework and what we need assistance with? Any questions from anyone for clarity?
Tom and Hope, how do we get in touch with you if we want to help?
See, did I put my email address? I'm going to put my
Yeah,
email.
the email addresses are on the end of this presentation, but we can also put them into the chat before we end today's training.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll make sure to put that in there as well as our phone numbers.
When this is recorded, does the chat go into the recording as well?
It doesn't, but it's on our last slide.
Okay, it is on the last slide.
Yeah, I believe it's still there. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. And so these next couple of last two slides, and it's literally just last two slides, oftentimes we get asked by a lot of different organizations of where can we even look for grant opportunities? Now, obviously, Tom has shared one of the key areas of what we're going to be applying for right now, but there are a plethora of other ways to search for opportunities. And so this is just to kind of give you a light look overview of all the opportunities and what I've done. And again, you're going to have this PowerPoint presentation that will have the PDFs of the actual URL links that are already embedded into the table. But what I've divided them up into is the federal level, state and local level, and then corporate, community, and family foundations. Tons of foundations. But one of the key things that I do want to let you all know is that there's a way to subscribe to listservs, even for free sites, where you can get alerted when there are new opportunities, new grant opportunities that arise. And obviously during this time of COVID, there's a lot of PPP grant loans that come out as loans, but then after you apply for them, they become a grant. But beyond those type of opportunities, there's also other types of pandemic funding opportunities that are focused around equity, inclusion, health equity, environmental, public health. And there's many ways based on what you're looking at. And we kind of talked about this in the last training, where you look at the mission and the goals and the values of that organization. And there's a lot of connection that you can find as it relates to all of those topical areas that I just mentioned, and sustainability and arts organizations and livable communities and creative placemaking. There's a lot of ways that you can connect the work of the arts community to these other topical areas. So again, the key thing that you can always do is subscribe. You can subscribe at a federal grant level, at state and local levels, as well as for corporate, community, and family foundations. The other side note that I have at the top is that obviously there are matching grants that are oftentimes available. Now, obviously what that means is that you already have within your organization residual revenue that you are able to match a grant with. And then obviously you have to build a case of saying why you would want to approach a funder for funding in order to match your funds with that. So there's even a larger investment that the organization is making when they do any type of matching grant opportunity. And so again, kind of going from left to right on the slide that you're looking at right now, any type of federal grant that you're looking at will always require more time for preparation, reading through all the necessary materials, doing a lot of pre-application work, as well as looking through the eligibility. Now, obviously, there's a lot of opportunities for nonprofit organizations to apply for grant funding. But one of the key things is that you always want to make sure that you have all of your proper paperwork in order. So that laundry list of resources that Tom has already gone through, that's already kind of indicated on the slide, you're going to need a lot of that same information: profit and loss statements, your audit report, your board list, your mission, your values, all of that information, metrics of past outcomes from shows, upcoming seasons. If there's any type of sort of social justice activities or partnerships that you have in the community, all of that verbiage, all of that boilerplate, you want to have that ready on hand, and you want to always revise it every year. But as you're looking at a federal level, you always want to look at those opportunities to make sure that you are addressing the narrative and what that federal opportunity is looking at. And that's not just at a federal level, but that also goes for your state and local grant opportunities, as well as definitely for your foundations. But as we look at the federal level, one of the key things that you need to have in place is that DUNS number. Now, obviously, Tom has already mentioned the DUNS number is that is critical. It's an easy and it's free to apply for that if you don't have that established. Obviously, establishing a nonprofit and getting your 501c3 paperwork is a whole nother story, but getting the DUNS paperwork is always pretty much easy and fast to do. You just have to make sure you have it in place. So again, if you're applying on behalf of your organization, not Riverwalk, you want to make sure you have that in place anytime you look at a federal opportunity. So there are a lot of opportunities that I have listed here. I did not list everything, but these are the top resources of looking for opportunities as it pertains to the arts. At state and local levels, obviously this is an example of the MCA. The A grant that we're looking at, that falls in this category here, but there's also the LEAP grants. There are several opportunities that come through the Greater Lansing Arts Council. Oftentimes, the Arts Council is pretty much used as a grantor to grant funds to other entities, be it if it's artists or art organizations, as well as community-based theater companies as well. There's City of Lansing, City of East Lansing, City of DeWitt. Every city has pretty much a jurisdiction where they have funding, where they have voted on it, where they have appropriated funds within their budget for it. And so oftentimes you want to keep a lookout for cities that also offer opportunities. Anytime you see this little icon of a $, this is where you oftentimes have to pay to play. That's kind of what I call it. You pay to be a monthly subscriber or an annual subscriber, and then you have access to a lot of different funding and opportunities within different areas, be it if it's community theater, if it's for K through 12, if it's collaborating with schools that are K through 12 and you're putting on a show. There's many different opportunities. And again, typically through Grants Watch, you can look through different counties, different states, even smaller jurisdictions, be it if you're looking to collaborate with other partners, let's say in the Upper Peninsula or Lower Peninsula or Southeast Michigan, Western Michigan. There's a lot of different opportunities, but typically there's like a subscription cost to that. And so that applies to not just Grants Watch, but also the Foundation Center and the Council of Michigan Foundations. Typically those three right there, and sometimes Funds Net Services also has a subscription as well. But we've been funded through the Capital Region Community Foundation, the Rotary Club. There's a plethora, again, of different foundations that are corporate. So we're talking about like Consumers Foundation or Lowe's or Menards Foundation. Any major for-profit corporation has what's called a corporate social responsibility. It's called CSR for short, where their job is obviously to provide revenue, not just in upkeeping for their stakeholders for what their operations hold, but it's their responsibility to give back to the surrounding community. So if you have a large corporation that is based within a city, oftentimes they provide a service back to the community by offering what's called community-based organizations, which is through their corporate social responsibility office. And it's very important to kind of establish a relationship with the program officer within those offices, because it's at those points of time where you can provide really pretty much secure funding for a particular show. Let's say, for example, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and us acquiring funding through a corporate entity, or possibly the director or the producer does some grassroots fundraising just for that particular show. There is a way that you can make an appeal to a corporation to fund different specific initiatives, not just operational, but something that's very geared towards a show. And then obviously community and family foundations. We have been funded by several different family foundations in the past. But most importantly, it's really important for us to not just think because we're a nonprofit that we can't make an appeal to a corporate foundation. So sometimes that starts with a proof of concept paper or a white paper. And really that's just like a 1-page or 2-pager that gives your elevator speech The key is to get your foot into the door, and then oftentimes you're invited to write a full proposal. Oftentimes as well, there are opportunities that are just listed on these websites. And so the key thing, again, just like the practice we did the last time with the consumers energy, I believe that was the foundation we were looking at. We looked at what kind of mission value and what kind of alignment that we have with them. So again, even on the second page, I list out some additional corporate, community, and family foundations. And then also when you look at state and local levels, even things like the Michigan State Federal Credit Union or other credit unions, all of your credit unions or Fifth Third Bank, all of these corporations have CSR opportunities where you can, where they want to make an appeal. Also look through your nearby village, the county grant opportunities. Also, as I mentioned, the COVID relief grants. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of funding currently right now as it addresses equity, diversity, inclusion, creative placemaking, sustainable communities combined with arts and culture. That is very huge right now. So again, if you're looking to put up a show, you possibly want to start thinking about the partnerships that you can have within your community and start to make an appeal to those potential areas. So again, this is just touching the very surface. Both of these charts have URL links that are available. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have our email addresses here. This training will be edited and made available for everyone else to view in the future.
I want to add one important point that I've overlooked just because I assumed it.
Yeah.
Riverwalk Theater is officially Community Circle Players Incorporated. So the grants are all made to Community Circle Players Incorporated. That's our official name. We do business as Riverwalk Theater. And that's important to point out when we get the DUNS number and the nonprofit number are all to Community Circle Players. You won't find Riverwalk Theater if you're searching it for that. That's important. We are a community theater, a community nonprofit organization with a mission to provide a variety of theatrical experiences to the community. And we have to believe in our mission and believe that we're doing this for the community because we are. And so having that as your approach to any organization, letting them know we're a community, we want a community, we are a resource to this community for arts. And that's important to remember also. Art is important to having a full, healthy life. And so that's why we do this. It's also fun, but it's also important to have a full, healthy life.
Even more fun when you win the grants.
That's right.
Not so fun when you write the final reports, but that's okay. Part of the work. Are we any final questions? Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the time that you've lent us to see our training. We hope that you will want to become involved and we'll reach out for one of these homework assignments. I don't want to make this sound like high school, but if you are interested in helping, this would be a way to get some on-hands experience with what it will be like to write a grant. And then the next step will be to find a grant opportunity and let's pursue it. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.